At 39, Kim Tae-young had built an empire from blood, silence, and the absolute certainty that some losses could never be recovered. The Korean crime boss controlled Seoul's underground with surgical precision, but 5 years ago, a rival's bomb had stolen his pregnant wife and unborn son, leaving him hollow in ways that power could never fill. Until a woman named Zara Johnson stumbled into his world, carrying a warmth he'd forgotten existed. The silence of the Gangnam medical facility at 2 a.m. was supposed to be peaceful. Zara Johnson moved through the sterile corridors with practiced efficiency, her cleaning cart wheels rolling softly against polished floors. At 24, she'd learned to find sanctuary in these quiet hours, when the world slept and she could work without the weight of stares or questions. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and despite the exhaustion that seemed permanently etched beneath her warm brown eyes, she moved with purpose. 3 jobs. That's what it took to keep Marcus alive. Her younger brother's leukemia treatments cost more than most people's salaries, and their insurance barely covered the basics. The experimental therapy he needed, the one that could save his life, remained impossibly out of reach at $250,000. Zara had $12,000 saved after 18 months of working herself to exhaustion. At this rate, Marcus would be gone long before she could afford hope. She paused outside the executive suite, checking her watch. Dr. Kim had scheduled a private consultation for tonight, which meant the facility's most exclusive wing would need extra attention. These after-hours meetings always made her nervous. Rich men conducting business in medical facilities rarely meant anything good. The sound reached her first, a low, pained groan echoing from the consultation room. Zara's EMT training kicked in before caution could stop her. She'd volunteered with emergency services during college, before Marcus got sick, and every spare moment became about earning money instead of saving lives. The skills remained sharp, even if she'd traded her stethoscope for a mop. The door was unlocked. Inside, a man lay unconscious on the examination table, his expensive black suit soaked with blood. He was Korean, tall and lean, with sharp features that would have been handsome if they weren't gray with blood loss. His dark hair was perfectly styled despite his condition, and even unconscious, he radiated an intensity that made the air feel charged. Zara's hands moved without hesitation. Pressure on the wound, check for pulse, assess breathing. The gunshot had torn through his left side, missing vital organs, but causing dangerous blood loss. He was minutes from shock, possibly death. She should call security. Protocol demanded it. Instead, she grabbed gauze and medical supplies from the cabinet, her training overriding procedure. This man was dying, and she'd taken an oath once that still mattered, even if she was now paid to clean instead of heal. Working quickly, she applied pressure bandages and started in 4-line with fluids she found in the emergency kit. Her hands were steady, certain, as she fought to stabilize him. This was what she was meant to do, what she was good at, before life had forced her into choosing between her calling and her family. The man's eyes fluttered open as his blood pressure stabilized. Dark eyes, almost black, fixed on her face with startling intensity. He tried to speak, his voice a rough whisper in Korean. Na yadul, na yanai. Mayanhi mayanhi. Zara didn't understand the words, but she recognized pain when she heard it. Not physical pain, this was deeper. Grief. Loss. The kind of anguish that lived in the soul. Shoo, she whispered, her hand finding his as machines beeped steadily around them. You're safe now. Don't try to talk. His grip tightened on her fingers with surprising strength. Even wounded, even vulnerable, power radiated from him like heat. She found herself humming softly, an old spiritual her grandmother used to sing. Something about weary souls finding rest. Something shifted in his face as her voice filled the room. The tension left his shoulders, and his breathing deepened into something closer to sleep than unconsciousness. Zara stayed with him through the night, monitoring his vitals, adjusting his and singing softly when his rest became restless. She'd always been good with healing people, with making them feel safe when their bodies betrayed them. It was why she dreamed of opening her own pediatric clinic someday, why she'd specialized in working with children during her EMT training. Those dreams felt impossibly distant now, buried under the weight of medical bills and desperation. When Dr. Kim arrived at dawn, He found his patient stable and alert, with Zara documenting vital signs like the medical professional she'd once trained to be. "What happened here?" Dr. Kim asked, his voice tight with something that might have been fear. The man on the table spoke before Zara could answer, his voice stronger now, but still carrying traces of that careful control she'd noticed even in his delirium. "She saved my life," he said simply, those dark eyes never leaving Zara's face. His English was perfect, educated, with just the faintest trace of an accent that made her think of expensive whiskey and quiet power. Dr. Kim's relief was palpable. "Mr. Kim, I'm so sorry. If I'd known you were coming early." The man, Mr. Kim, dismissed the doctor's apology with a slight gesture. His attention remained focused entirely on Zara, studying her with an intensity that made her suddenly aware of her cleaning uniform, her tired face, her hands still stained with his blood. "What's your name?" he asked. "Zara Johnson," she replied, lifting her chin slightly. She'd learned not to show weakness, even when she felt it. "Zara Johnson," he repeated, as if testing how her name felt in his mouth. "You have medical training, EMT certification, some nursing school before other things became more important." She watched him process this information, saw the exact moment he made some internal calculation she couldn't follow. "Thank you, Zara Johnson," he said finally. "You could have walked away, called for help, let someone else handle a stranger bleeding in the dark." "I don't walk away from people who need help," she said quietly. "It's not who I am." Something flickered in his expression, an emotion too quick to catch but intense enough to change the entire atmosphere of the room. "No," he said softly, "I can see that it's not." Dr. Kim cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Kim, perhaps we should discuss your follow-up care later," the man said, his eyes still on Zara. "Miss Johnson, do you have a moment to speak privately?" It wasn't really a question, despite the polite phrasing. Men like this, men with that particular combination of expensive clothing and unconscious authority, didn't make requests. They made statements that sounded like requests. Dr. Kim excused himself quickly, leaving them alone. "You work here," Mr. Kim observed. "Cleaning crew, night shift," Zara confirmed, suddenly defensive. "It's honest work." "I wasn't judging," he said mildly. "I was calculating." "Calculating what?" "How someone with your skills ends up cleaning floors instead of saving lives." The question hit too close to home, touched on dreams she'd had to bury and choices that still kept her awake at night. "Life happens," she said simply. "People need different things at different times." "What do you need, Zara Johnson?" The question was asked so quietly, with such unexpected gentleness, that for a moment she forgot he was a stranger. Forgot that men who got shot and treated in private medical facilities at 2 a.m. were probably not the kind of men she should confide in. "My brother," she heard herself say. "I need my brother to live." "How old is he?" 16. "Leukemia. The treatments that might save him cost more than I'll make in 10 lifetimes." Mr. Kim was quiet for a long moment, those dark eyes studying her face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. "You risked your job to help me tonight," he said finally. "Why?" "Because you were dying, and I could help. That's reason enough. Even though you don't know who I am, what I might be capable of." Zara met his gaze steadily. "I know you're someone important enough to need private medical care at 2 a.m. I know you carry yourself like you're used to people obeying you. And I know that when you were delirious with blood loss, you were calling for your son and your wife in Korean, and it sounded like your heart was breaking." His entire body went still, and for a moment she wondered if she'd crossed some invisible line. "You speak Korean?" he asked. "No," she said softly, "but I speak grief. It sounds the same in every language." Something cracked in his carefully controlled expression, something raw and human that transformed his face completely. "My wife was pregnant," he said quietly. "They died together 5 years ago." "I'm sorry," Zara whispered, meaning it. "So am I," he replied. "I thought I was finished with caring about anyone. Finished with family, with love, with anything that could be taken away. But you stayed with a stranger through the night. Sang to him when he was afraid. Made him feel less alone in the dark." He sat up slowly, testing his strength, and Zara moved instinctively to steady him. His hand covered hers where it rested on his arm, warm and surprisingly gentle. "I'm going to ask you something, Zara Johnson, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Okay, what if I told you there was a way to save your brother? All the treatments, the best doctors, every medical innovation available. What if I could guarantee his life? Her heart stopped. It's impossible. That kind of money doesn't exist for people like me. It does for people like me, he said simply. The question is whether you'd be willing to accept it. Nothing's free, she said carefully. What would you want in return? Your skills, he said. Your gift for healing. And perhaps, if you're willing, help with something I thought I'd never want again. Which is learning how to be around children without remembering everything I've lost. The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard, made her see past the expensive suit and unconscious authority to the broken man underneath. Who are you, she asked. Someone who's been alone too long, he replied. Someone who's forgotten what it feels like to hope for anything beyond survival. That's not an answer. Kim Tae-young, he said finally. And you, Zara Johnson, just reminded me that some things are worth the risk of losing. Outside the windows, Seoul was waking up to another day. Traffic sounds filtered through the glass, the ordinary rhythm of a world continuing its rotation. But inside this sterile room, something had shifted between a woman who cleaned floors and dreamed of healing, and a man who commanded an empire but had forgotten how to live. Zara looked at this stranger who spoke of impossible solutions and hidden pain, and felt her life balanced on the edge of a choice she didn't yet understand. Mr. Kim, she said slowly, what exactly are you offering me? Everything you need, he replied, and perhaps everything I've forgotten I wanted. The machines continued their steady beeping, marking time in a moment that would change everything, though neither of them knew it yet. All Zara knew was that hope, which had seemed impossibly distant just hours before, was suddenly sitting in front of her wearing an expensive suit and speaking in a voice that promised salvation. The question was whether she was brave enough to reach for it. Kim Tae-young didn't believe in coincidence. In his world, every connection had a purpose, every intersection meant something. Which was why, 3 days after a night janitor had saved his life, he found himself studying a comprehensive dossier on Zara Johnson while his morning coffee grew cold. The information painted a picture of quiet desperation wrapped in fierce determination. Born in Atlanta, moved to Seoul 18 months ago for Marcus's treatment at the Specialized Cancer Center. 3 jobs: overnight cleaning at the medical facility, afternoon shifts at a hotel laundry, weekend work at a restaurant in Itaewon. No criminal background, no debts beyond medical bills, no family except the dying brother she'd moved across an ocean to save. What the dossier couldn't capture was the way she'd hummed to him in the dark, or how her presence had made him feel less alone for the first time in 5 years. His phone buzzed. Director of Operations, Mr. Shin. Sir, we've located the woman. She's currently at the medical facility. Tae-young checked his watch. 2:47 p.m. She shouldn't be working until tonight. Why is she there? Unknown. Shall we continue surveillance? No, Tae-young said, already reaching for his jacket. I'll handle this personally. The drive to Gangnam took 23 minutes through Seoul's afternoon traffic. Tae-young used the time to consider why he was personally investigating someone who should have been a simple background check. The logical explanation was that she'd seen him vulnerable at information that could compromise his operations. The truth was more complicated. He found her in the pediatric wing, kneeling beside a small girl who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. The child was crying, clutching a stuffed rabbit while a frazzled nurse tried unsuccessfully to convince her to take medicine. I don't want to, the little girl sobbed in English. It tastes bad and my tummy hurts. Zara's voice was impossibly gentle. I know, sweetheart. Medicine is yucky sometimes. But you know what I think? What? The child sniffled. I think that rabbit of yours is very brave. What's his name? Mr. Hopscotch, the girl whispered. Mr. Hopscotch looks like the kind of rabbit who helps little girls be brave too. Do you think he might want to take the medicine with you? Like a team. The transformation was immediate. The child straightened, looking between Zara and her stuffed animal with newfound determination. If Mr. Hopscotch helps me, he absolutely will, Zara assured her, miming giving medicine to the toy first. See, he says it's not so bad when you're helping each other. The little girl took her medicine without further protest, then hugged both the rabbit and Zara with equal enthusiasm. Your magic, she declared seriously. No magic, Zara replied, smoothing the child's hair. Just teamwork. Tae-young watched this interaction from the doorway, something tight in his chest loosening and tightening simultaneously. When was the last time he'd seen someone interact with a child without an agenda, without calculation, with simple human kindness? When was the last time he'd been around children at all? The nurse thanked Zara profusely before hurrying away with her now cooperative patient. Zara remained kneeling on the floor, tidying toys that had been scattered during the earlier struggle. "She's not your responsibility," Taeyong said from the doorway. Zara looked up, surprise flashing across her features before settling into wariness. "Mr. Kim, I didn't expect to see you here. I could say the same. You're not scheduled to work until tonight." She stood slowly, unconsciously defensive. "Marcus has an appointment. I came early to ask about payment plans for his next round of treatment." "How much?" The question was asked quietly, but Zara's spine straightened as if he'd shouted. "That's not your concern, Mr. Kim." $250,000, he said, watching her face. "For the experimental therapy that could save his life." "How do you know that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I make it my business to know things that matter," Taeyong replied. "The question is what you're willing to do to get it." Zara's hands clenched at her sides. "I work. I save every dollar. I'll find a way. At your current savings rate, it will take you 6 years to afford the treatment," he said with mathematical precision. "Marcus has months, not years." "Stop," she said sharply. "You don't get to come here and throw statistics at me like I don't know the math. I live it every single day." "Then let me change the math," he said simply. "With what?" "There are no solutions for people like me. Rich men don't hand out miracles to cleaning ladies who stumble into their problems." "Don't they?" he asked mildly. Before Zara could respond, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Shouting voices, running footsteps, someone calling security. Through the window, Taeyong could see a well-dressed man in an expensive suit arguing with hospital staff. "That's Dr. Harrison," Zara said quietly. "Pharmaceutical executive. He's been persistent." "About what?" "He wants me to steal medication samples. Says he can pay enough to cover Marcus's treatments if I help him bypass FDA regulations." And I told him no. Some things aren't for sale. Even your brother's life. Especially that," she said firmly. "Marcus wouldn't want to live if it meant I became someone I couldn't recognize." Taeyong studied her face, seeing the absolute conviction there. In his world, everyone had a price. Everyone compromised when the stakes were high enough. But this woman, this cleaner with nothing to lose and everything to gain, held herself to a moral standard that didn't bend under pressure. It was rare. It was remarkable. It was exactly what he'd been looking for without knowing it. The argument in the hallway escalated. Security appeared, but Dr. Harrison pushed past them, heading directly for the pediatric wing. "Miss Johnson," he called out, slightly breathless. "I need to speak with you. My offer is still on the table. Last chance to be practical." "I told you no," Zara replied, positioning herself between the man and the children's wing. "You told me no when the figure was 50,000, Dr. Harrison said urgently. "I'm authorized to go higher." "Much higher." "How much higher?" Taeyong asked conversationally, stepping into view. Dr. Harrison's confident expression faltered as he took in Taeyong's expensive suit and quiet authority. "And you are?" "Someone interested in Miss Johnson's answer," Taeyong replied. "Please, continue your negotiation." The pharmaceutical executive looked between them uncertainly. "This is a private conversation. Nothing involving Miss Johnson is private anymore," Taeyong said with casual finality that made Dr. Harrison take a step backward. I don't understand." "You don't need to," Taeyong replied. "You need to leave. Now." There was something in his tone, some quality of absolute certainty, that made Dr. Harrison's face go pale. He looked at Zara one more time, opened his mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it and hurried away. "You didn't have to do that," Zara said quietly. "Yes, I did," Taeyong replied. "Men like him don't take no for an answer from women they see as desperate. They only understand power. And you have power. I have enough." They walked toward the elevator in silence, the weight of unspoken questions hanging between them. Taeyong noticed how other people moved aside as they passed, how conversations quieted, how even the security guards straightened unconsciously. This was what his life looked like to outsiders. What it would look like to her. "Miss Johnson," he said as they waited for the elevator. "That man will return. Men like him don't give up when there's money involved." "I can handle it," she replied. "Can you?" he asked. "Because handling Dr. Harrison is the least of your problems." "What do you mean?" You've been taking loans, haven't you? To cover Marcus's current treatments. How do you? She stopped, understanding dawning. You investigated me. I investigate everyone who matters to me, he said simply. And you, Zara Johnson, matter to me. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. They stepped inside together, the small space suddenly filled with tension. The loans, he continued. $30,000 from Pacific Finance. Interest rate of 18%. Payment already 2 weeks overdue. Stop, she whispered. They don't extend deadlines, Taeyong said quietly. They extend consequences. The elevator doors opened at the ground floor, but neither of them moved. You can't know that, Zara said, but her voice lacked conviction. I can know it because I know them, Taeyong replied. Pacific Finance is a front operation. The real lenders are far less forgiving than banks. What are you saying? I'm saying that in approximately 48 hours, your debt will be transferred to collectors who don't care about your brother's medical needs or your honest work ethic. The blood drained from Zara's face. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to save you, he said simply. Again, they exited the elevator together, moving through the lobby's marble and glass luxury toward the street. Outside, Seoul's evening rush was beginning. Thousands of people hurrying home to families and safety. My car is this way, Taeyong said, gesturing toward a sleek black sedan parked illegally in front of the medical center. I can take the subway, Zara replied automatically. Not tonight, he said firmly. Not anymore. Before she could protest, 3 men approached from different directions. They moved with casual precision, surrounding Zara without seeming to do so. One of them smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Miss Johnson, the smiling man said. We need to talk. Zara's entire body went rigid. These weren't hospital staff or pharmaceutical executives. These were the kind of men who appeared when money became more important than laws. About what? She managed. Your payment schedule, the man replied pleasantly. Mr. Lee is concerned about the delay. Taeyong didn't move, didn't speak, but something shifted in the atmosphere. The 3 men suddenly looked uncertain, glancing between him and Zara with newfound wariness. Gentlemen, Taeyong said conversationally. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. The lead man's smile vanished. This doesn't concern you. Everything concerning Miss Johnson concerns me, Taeyong replied. As of this moment, her debt is my responsibility. You can't just claim someone else's debt, the man protested. I can do whatever I choose, Taeyong said with quiet certainty. The question is whether you'd like to discuss it with me personally, or whether you'd prefer to report back to Mr. Lee that the situation has been resolved. The 3 men looked at each other, silent communication passing between them. Whatever they saw in Taeyong's face, whatever reputation preceded him, it was enough. We'll be in touch, the lead man said finally, but they were already backing away. No, Taeyong replied pleasantly. You won't. The men left quickly, disappearing into the evening crowd as if they'd never been there. Zara stood frozen on the sidewalk, her breathing shallow and rapid. You just paid my debt, she whispered. I just prevented you from being sold to pay it, he corrected. There's a difference. How much do I owe you? Nothing, Taeyong said, opening the car door for her. Because you're not going to be in debt anymore. I don't understand. Get in the car, Zara. Let me explain how this is going to work. She hesitated for a long moment, looking between his face and the open car door. This was the moment, the choice point where her life would change irrevocably. You saved my life, he said quietly. Now let me save yours and your brother's. I don't take charity, she said. Especially from criminals, he finished. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering employment. Doing what? What you do naturally, he replied. Healing people. Taking care of those who need it. Making broken things whole again. And in return, your brother gets every treatment he needs. You get a life where money isn't a constant fear. And I get someone who reminds me what it feels like to hope for something beyond mere survival. Zara looked at this man who spoke of salvation in measured tones, who commanded fear and respect with equal ease, who had somehow become her unlikely savior. Mr. Kim, she said slowly, what exactly are you offering me? Everything you need, he replied. Everything I forgot I wanted. Everything we both deserve. She got in the car. As they pulled away from the medical center, Seoul's lights beginning to sparkle in the gathering dusk, Zara realized that her life had just divided into before and after this moment. Before Kim Taeyong, when hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. And after, when hope wore an expensive suit and spoke in quiet promises that sounded like salvation. The question was whether salvation could come from the kind of man who made other men disappear with nothing more than a conversation on a busy street. But as Marcus's face flashed in her mind, as the weight of impossible debt lifted from her shoulders for the first time in months, she realized that sometimes salvation came from exactly the places you'd least expect it. Sometimes it came from the dark. Taeyong's private office was nothing like Zara had expected. Instead of dark wood and intimidating leather that screamed criminal empire, the space felt surprisingly warm and professional. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Seoul's glittering skyline, and the furniture was modern but comfortable, expensive without being ostentatious. Medical equipment catalogs were stacked neatly on his desk beside what appeared to be legitimate business contracts. "This is your front operation," Zara said, settling into the chair he'd indicated. "This is my legitimate business," Taeyong corrected, pouring tea from an elegant ceramic set. "Medical equipment distribution throughout Southeast Asia. It generates substantial legal income and provides excellent cover for other activities." "Other activities," she repeated. "Import, export, security consulting, dispute resolution," Taeyong replied with a slight smile. "All very broad terms. All very careful ways of not saying crime boss." "I prefer the term businessman with diversified interests," he said, offering her a cup of jasmine tea. The porcelain was delicate, probably worth more than her monthly salary. Zara accepted the tea but didn't drink, too nervous to trust her hands not to shake. "Mr. Kim, what exactly do you want from me?" Taeyong settled behind his desk, the city lights creating a halo effect around his perfectly styled dark hair. In this setting, wearing an immaculate charcoal suit and speaking in measured tones, he looked every inch the successful executive. It was only his eyes that betrayed the dangerous man underneath, those dark depths that seemed to see everything and reveal nothing. $300,000 annually, he said without preamble. Paid monthly, in addition to complete medical coverage for you and Marcus. Zara's teacup rattled against its saucer. "That's impossible. It's Tuesday's operating budget for my shipping division," Taeyong replied matter-of-factly. "Marcus will receive the experimental treatment immediately, followed by whatever ongoing care he requires. No cost limits, no insurance restrictions, no bureaucratic delays." Her throat felt dry. "What would I have to do?" "Serve as my private medical consultant," he said. "My associates occasionally require discreet health care. Gunshot wounds, knife injuries, broken bones that can't be treated in hospitals where questions get asked." "You want me to patch up criminals?" she said quietly. "I want you to save lives," he replied. "Just like you saved mine." Zara set down her tea with careful precision. "What else?" "You'll live on my estate," he continued. "The West Wing has been converted into a medical facility with everything you could need. Your own apartment, private entrance, complete independence within the secured perimeter." "Secured from what?" "From people who might use you to get to me," Taeyong said simply. "And from people who might hurt you because of what you represent." "Which is what?" "Someone I protect," he replied. "Someone who matters to me." The weight of those words settled between them, heavy with implications she wasn't ready to examine. "There's something else," Taeyong said, his voice losing some of its business formality. "Something I didn't expect to ask when I planned this conversation." Zara waited. "I want you to help me understand why children respond to you the way they do," he said finally. "I thought you didn't have children," Zara said carefully. "I don't," Taeyong confirmed. "But I've been thinking about legacy. About the future. About whether a man like me can leave something behind besides fear and territory." "You're talking about having a family," she said, trying to understand where this was leading. "I'm talking about learning whether that's possible," he replied. "My wife was pregnant when she died. We were going to name the baby Jinwoo if it was a boy, Minji if it was a girl. I've avoided children ever since because every time I see them, I remember what I lost." The pain in his voice was carefully controlled but unmistakable. Zara found herself leaning forward, her natural instinct to comfort overriding her wariness. "But watching you with that little girl today," he continued, "the way she trusted you immediately, the way you made her feel brave instead of afraid, I realized that maybe avoidance isn't healing. Maybe it's just fear wearing a different mask." "You want me to teach you how to be around children," Zara said. "I want you to help me understand if I'm capable of being the kind of man who could be a father," he said. The kind of man who could build a family instead of just protecting territory. Zara studied his face, seeing vulnerability beneath the controlled exterior. This is about more than medical consulting, isn't it? Yes, he admitted. It is. What are you really asking me, Mr. Kim? I'm asking you to live in my world, he said carefully, to take care of my people when they need it, to help me learn whether I can be more than just a man who solves problems with violence and money. And in return, your brother lives, he said simply. You never worry about money again. You have protection from everything that could hurt you. And you get to practice medicine the way you dreamed of, helping people who need it most. The silence stretched between them as Zara processed the magnitude of what he was offering. $300,000 a year. Marcus's life saved. A chance to use her medical training for something meaningful. All she had to do was enter the world of a man who casually made other men disappear. What about loyalty? She asked. What about discretion? What happens if I see something I can't live with? Taeyong's expression grew serious. You'll see violence, Zara. Not gratuitous, not cruel, but decisive and sometimes brutal. Men in my position don't have the luxury of half measures when survival is at stake. And if I can't handle that, then you tell me, and we find another way, he said. I won't ask you to compromise your conscience. Your moral clarity is part of what makes you valuable to me. Valuable how? Because everyone in my world is compromised in some way, he explained. Everyone has done things they regret, crossed lines they can't uncross. You haven't. Your integrity is intact, and that makes you rare. So you want to keep me as a pet, she said with an edge to her voice. Your tame moral compass. I want to keep you as a reminder, he replied without offense, of who I used to be before I became who I had to be. What happens if I betray you? Zara asked. What are the consequences? Taeyong was quiet for a long moment, considering his words carefully. Betrayal would mean your brother loses all medical care immediately, he said finally. It would mean you both lose my protection, which puts you back where you started, except now you'd owe money to very dangerous people who don't forget debts. And it would mean I'd have to treat you like I treat all threats to my organization, he said quietly. I don't want to do that, Zara, but I need you to understand the stakes. You'd hurt me, she said, testing the words. I'd remove you as a problem, he replied with careful precision. Permanently. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. There it was, the reality beneath the expensive suit and careful manners. This man could end her life with the same casual efficiency he'd used to make loan sharks disappear. But you don't think I'll betray you? She said. No, he replied with certainty. I don't. Why not? Because you stayed with a dying stranger all night instead of calling for help and walking away, Taeyong said. Because you refused $250,000 rather than compromise your ethics. Because you moved across an ocean to save your brother's life. So I know what you're capable of when someone you love is at stake, he said. And I'm offering to be the person who ensures you never have to choose between love and survival again. Zara closed her eyes, her mind racing through options that all led back to the same impossible conclusion. She could refuse, maintain her independence, and watch Marcus die slowly while drowning in debt. Or she could accept, enter a world of violence and moral ambiguity, and give her brother a chance at life. When she opened her eyes, Taeyong was watching her with patient intensity. I have conditions, she said finally. Name them. Marcus gets to visit whenever he wants, as often as he wants, she said. I won't be isolated from my family. Agreed, Taeyong said immediately. I maintain some independence, Zara continued. I'm not a prisoner, even a comfortable one. I need to be able to leave the estate, have my own space, make my own choices about how I spend my time. Within security parameters, yes, he replied. I'll assign protection, but it will be discreet. And I won't participate in violence, she said firmly. I'll treat injuries, but I won't help plan attacks or provide intelligence for operations that hurt people. I wouldn't ask you to, Taeyong said. Violence is my responsibility, not yours. Zara took a shaky breath. If I do this, if I enter your world, what happens to who I am? Do I just become another one of your assets? You become someone I protect, he said quietly. Someone I value. Someone whose well-being matters more to me than profit or territory or power. Why, she asked. Why me, why this? Because you reminded me what it feels like to want something beyond mere survival, Taeyong replied. Because you make me think that maybe the man I was before tragedy broke me isn't completely dead. And if he is dead, she asked, if you can't be that man again, then at least I'll have tried, he said. At least I'll have given you and Marcus the life you deserve while I figured it out. Zara looked around the office, at the medical catalogs and legitimate business contracts, at the man who built empires and commanded fear, but spoke about hope with the careful wonder of someone rediscovering something precious. I accept your offer, Mr. Kim, she said quietly. All of it. Something shifted in his expression, relief mixed with satisfaction, and something deeper that might have been gratitude. There's one more thing, Taeyong said, reaching into his desk drawer. He withdrew a sleek smartphone, obviously expensive and clearly customized. This phone connects directly to me, he explained. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Medical emergencies, personal concerns, anything that makes you afraid or uncomfortable. You call, I answer. What if you're busy? Nothing is more important than ensuring your safety and peace of mind, he replied simply. Nothing. Zara accepted the phone, surprised by its weight and the warmth still clinging to it from his pocket. Your conscience is exactly why I chose you, Zara Johnson, he said softly. Don't ever lose that clarity, no matter what you see in my world. I won't, she promised. Then welcome to your new life, he said, extending his hand for a formal handshake. When their hands met, Zara felt something click into place, some fundamental shift in the universe's arrangement. She was no longer Zara Johnson, the desperate cleaning lady fighting an impossible battle against her brother's illness. She was Zara Johnson, under the protection of Kim Taeyong. She was someone who mattered to a dangerous man, someone whose well-being had become priority in an empire built on careful calculations and strategic violence. Outside the windows, Seoul sparkled with a million lights, each one representing a life, a story, a choice that led to this moment. And somewhere in that vast city, Marcus was sleeping in a hospital bed, unaware that his sister had just traded her simple life for his complex salvation. As Taeyong's hand lingered on hers for a moment longer than strictly professional, Zara wondered if salvation always came with such beautiful, terrifying complications. She was about to find out. 3 months after accepting Kim Taeyong's proposition, Zara had established a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. The west wing of his Hanamdong estate had been transformed into a state-of-the-art medical facility that rivaled anything she'd seen in major hospitals. Her apartment adjoined the medical suite, spacious and comfortable, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking private gardens. Most importantly, Marcus was thriving. The experimental treatment was working. His latest blood work showed remission markers that his oncologist called miraculous. The hollow exhaustion had left his 16-year-old face, replaced by the bright energy of a teenager who was remembering what it felt like to plan for the future instead of just surviving each day. Thank you, Nuna, Marcus said during his weekly visit, using the Korean term for older sister that he'd learned from Taeyong's staff. I know what you gave up for me. I didn't give up anything, Zara replied, adjusting the 4-line for one of Taeyong's associates who'd arrived with a knife wound 3 hours earlier. I gained purpose. And a very protective Korean crime boss who watches you like you might disappear, Marcus observed with the blunt honesty of teenagers. Zara glanced toward the security monitors where she could see Taeyong in his office, conducting what appeared to be a tense negotiation with several men in expensive suits. Even through the cameras, his controlled intensity was visible. Mr. Kim takes his responsibilities seriously, she said carefully. Is that what you call it? Marcus asked, grinning. Because the way he looks at you during dinner doesn't look like responsibility to me. Heat rose in Zara's cheeks. She'd noticed those looks too, the way Taeyong's attention lingered on her face when he thought she wasn't paying attention. The way their conversations had gradually shifted from purely professional to something deeper, more personal. Their dinners had become a ritual. 3 nights a week, when his schedule allowed, they would eat together in the estate's smaller dining room. The conversation had evolved from careful politeness to genuine exchanges about medicine, about soul, about the complexity of building something meaningful in a world built on violence. He was different than she'd expected. Quieter, more thoughtful. He asked intelligent questions about her medical work and listened to her answers with focused attention that made her feel heard in ways she'd forgotten were possible. The man who commanded fear throughout Seoul's underground also remembered that she preferred jasmine tea to coffee, that she missed Atlanta's southern food, that she worried about maintaining her medical certifications while working outside traditional healthcare systems. Your patient is stable, Marcus observed, nodding toward the associate she'd been treating. Zara checked the monitors one more time. Park Ji-soo, mid-level enforcer who'd been carved up in a territorial dispute. The wounds were clean, stitched properly, and already showing signs of healthy healing. He'd been respectful and grateful, like most of Taeyong's people who ended up in her care. She'd learned that loyalty ran deep in this organization. The men and women who worked for Taeyong genuinely respected him, followed him not just from fear, but from something approaching devotion. It painted a picture of leadership she hadn't expected from someone in his position. Miss Johnson, her intercom crackled with Taeyong's voice. Could you join me in my office when you have a moment? On my way, she replied, checking her patient one more time before leaving him in Marcus's capable supervision. Taeyong's office was on the other side of the estate, connected by corridors lined with original artwork and expensive furnishings that somehow managed to feel warm rather than ostentatious. She found him standing by the windows, still wearing his business suit, but with his jacket removed and his sleeves rolled up. He looked tired, she realized. The kind of deep exhaustion that came from carrying too much responsibility for too long. You wanted to see me, she said. He turned, offering a slight smile that transformed his entire face. How is Park Ji-soo? Stable. The wounds were clean, no signs of infection. He'll be back to work within the week if he follows my instructions. He will, Taeyong said with certainty. My people take medical advice seriously. Because they respect competence, Zara observed. Because they respect you, he corrected. Word travels quickly in my organization. You've earned a reputation for caring about their well-being, not just their tactical value. They're human beings, she said simply. They deserve to be treated as such. Something shifted in his expression, a mixture of appreciation and something deeper that made her pulse quicken. I received an interesting phone call today, Taeyong said, moving to his desk where several documents were spread out. Oh. The director of Seoul Children's Hospital, Dr. Kim Min-wo. He's requesting our foundation's support for a new pediatric wing. Zara knew about the Kim Foundation, Taeyong's legitimate charitable organization that funded medical research and healthcare initiatives throughout Asia. It was how he laundered money, certainly, but it also provided genuine help to people who needed it. That's wonderful, she said. Children's healthcare is always underfunded. Dr. Kim specifically mentioned that our involvement could include consultation on child-friendly medical environments. He continued. He seems to think our foundation might have expertise in trauma-informed pediatric care. Taeyong's eyes met hers. I told him we'd visit the facility tomorrow to assess their needs personally. Zara repeated. Unless you'd prefer not to, he said quickly. I know children aren't officially part of your responsibilities here. No, I'd love to help, she said immediately. It's just, are you sure you want to visit a children's hospital? With everything you told me about avoiding. About avoiding children because they remind me of what I lost, he finished quietly. Yes, I'm sure. You were right when you said avoidance isn't healing. What changed your mind? You did, he said simply. Watching you with Marcus, with the children at the medical center, even with Park Ji-soo when he was scared and hurt. You have a gift for making people feel safe when their world is falling apart. And you want to learn that. I want to understand it, he said. I want to know if there's hope for someone like me to build something lasting, something that creates life instead of just protecting it. The next morning, they drove to Seoul Children's Hospital in Taeyong's bulletproof sedan, security following at a discreet distance. Zara had chosen her outfit carefully, professional but approachable, wanting to make a good impression on the medical staff. Taeyong wore a dark charcoal suit with a subtle tie, looking every inch the successful businessman rather than the dangerous man she knew him to be. But she could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful control that meant he was fighting internal battles. You don't have to do this, she said as they pulled into the hospital parking garage. Yes, I do, he replied. If I'm going to build a future worth having, I need to stop hiding from the parts of life that scare me. Dr. Kim Min-wo was waiting for them in the lobby, a distinguished man in his 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He greeted Taeyong with the respectful deference that came from knowing exactly who was funding his hospital's expansion. Mr. Kim, Thank you for considering our request, Dr. Kim said. The new pediatric wing will serve children throughout Seoul, many from families who can't afford specialized care. Show us what you need, Taeyong replied. The tour began with the current children's ward, a bright space filled with colorful artwork and child-sized furniture. But Zara could see the limitations immediately, the cramped quarters that made family visits difficult, the lack of specialized equipment for complex cases. What she noticed more than the facilities, however, was how the children responded to their presence. They were drawn to her immediately, the way children always were. A 6-year-old recovering from surgery waved shyly from his bed. Twin girls with matching casts on their arms giggled and whispered to each other when she smiled at them. But it was Taeyong's reaction that captured her attention. He'd gone very still, watching the children with an expression she'd never seen before. Longing mixed with fear, hope shadowed by old grief. His hands, usually so controlled, trembled slightly at his sides. Mr. Kim, one of the nurses called softly. There's a little girl here who might benefit from your foundation's trauma counseling program. They were led to a small private room where a child sat curled in the corner, clutching a worn stuffed animal. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, with huge dark eyes that held too much knowledge for someone so young. This is Yoonji, the nurse explained quietly. She was in a car accident 2 weeks ago. Lost both parents. She hasn't spoken since. Physical injuries, Dr. Kim added. Healed completely. But psychologically, she won't talk to anyone, the nurse finished. Doctors, social workers, other children. She just sits there holding that little bear. Zara felt her heart break looking at this tiny girl carrying such enormous loss. Without thinking, she moved closer, settling on the floor near Yoonji's chair. Hi there, she said softly. I like your bear. What's his name? Yoonji looked at her for a moment, then buried her face in the stuffed animal's fur. That's okay, Zara continued gently. Sometimes we don't feel like talking, especially when sad things happen. Bears are good listeners, aren't they? The little girl peeked over her toy, studying Zara's face. I had a bear when I was your age, Zara said. His name was Coco because he was brown like chocolate. He helped me feel brave when I was scared. Behind her, she could hear Dr. Kim explaining the situation to Taeyong in hushed tones. The child had no other family, would likely be placed in institutional care, needed specialized psychological treatment that was expensive and rarely covered by social services. Yoonji shifted slightly, moving a little closer to Zara. Do you think your bear might like to meet my friend Mr. Kim? Zara asked. He's very tall and serious looking, but he's actually very kind. He helps children who need special care. For the first time, Yoonji looked directly at Taeyong. He'd remained standing by the door, probably afraid to come closer, but something in the child's direct gaze made him take a tentative step forward. Hello, Yoonji, he said quietly. The little girl studied his face with that particular intensity children brought to judging adults. Whatever she saw there, it must have passed some internal test, because she whispered something so softly that only Zara could hear. What did she say? Dr. Kim asked. She asked if you're sad too, Zara translated, looking up at Taeyong. Something cracked in his carefully controlled expression. Yes, he said simply, crouching down to Yoonji's eye level. I'm sad too. I lost someone very important to me. Yoonji considered this, then held out her bear for Taeyong to see. This is Mr. Snuggles, she whispered, her first words in 2 weeks. Hello, Mr. Snuggles, Taeyong said gravely. I'm honored to meet you both. The breakthrough was immediate and profound. Yoonji began talking in a steady stream, telling Taeyong about her parents, about the accident, about how scared she was to be alone. He listened with the same focused attention he brought to business negotiations, asking gentle questions and acknowledging her fears with honest respect. Watching him with this broken little girl, seeing the careful tenderness in his voice and the genuine compassion in his eyes, Zara felt something shift irreversibly in her chest. This was the man he could have been, would have been, if tragedy hadn't forced him to build walls around his heart. This was who he still was, underneath the controlled violence and calculated ruthlessness. Mr. Kim, Dr. Kim said quietly, I believe we could arrange for Yoonji to be part of our new pediatric psychological support program. Cost is irrelevant, Taeyong replied without taking his eyes off the little girl. Whatever she needs. They spent 2 more hours at the hospital, touring facilities and discussing the foundation's involvement. But it was that moment with Yoonji that transformed everything. In the car afterward, Taeyong was quiet for a long time. "Are you all right?" Zara asked. "I didn't expect it to feel like that," he said finally. "Like what?" "Like hope," he replied. "Like maybe the capacity to love isn't something you lose permanently. Maybe it just goes dormant until the right person shows you how to access it again." "Children sense authenticity, not power," Zara said. "Yoonji saw who you really are underneath everything else." "And who am I really?" he asked. "Someone who understands loss," she said. "Someone who wants to protect innocence instead of just territory. Someone who's capable of incredible tenderness when he allows himself to be." "Is that who you see when you look at me?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said. "That's exactly who I see." Their eyes met in the rearview mirror, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with employment contracts or medical consultation. That evening, they had dinner together as usual, but the conversation was different. Deeper, more personal, touched with new understanding. "I've been thinking about what you said," Taeyong said over dessert. "About grief, not meaning you can't love again. It means you know love's value," Zara replied. "It means when you do love again, you don't take it for granted." "Is that what's happening here?" he asked carefully. "Are we learning to love again?" Zara felt her heart skip. "I think we are," she said softly. "Even though I'm a dangerous man who's done terrible things to protect what matters to me," he asked. "Especially because of that," she replied. "Because under all that protection and control, you're someone worth loving." Later that night, as Zara prepared for bed in her comfortable apartment, she realized that somewhere between treating his associates and visiting children's hospitals, between formal dinners and quiet conversations, she'd stopped thinking of Kim Taeyong as her employer. She'd started thinking of him as the man she was falling in love with, despite every rational reason why that was complicated and dangerous and possibly impossible. But watching him with Yoonji today, seeing the gentle man emerging from behind years of protective armor, she knew that love was exactly what was happening between them. The question was whether a woman who valued healing and a man who lived by controlled violence could build something lasting together. As she drifted toward sleep, Zara thought about Yoonji's brave whisper and Taeyong's honest answer, about the way love could emerge from the most unexpected places if you were brave enough to let down your walls. Maybe they could build something beautiful together after all. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning when Marcus didn't answer his phone. Zara tried 3 times before her chest tightened with familiar panic. Her brother was religious about staying in contact, especially since his treatment had stabilized and he'd returned to a modified school schedule. He understood that her new life came with new dangers, that people who mattered to Kim Taeyong needed to be careful. She found him 20 minutes later in the estate's security office, pale and shaken, with 3 of Taeyong's men surrounding him like protective shields. "What happened?" she demanded, her medical training taking over as she checked him for injuries. "I'm fine, Nuna," Marcus said quickly, but his voice was tight with stress. "Just scared." Mr. Shin, the head of security, stepped forward with grim professionalism. "Miss Johnson, your brother noticed suspicious surveillance outside his school this morning. 3 men in a black sedan, Korean, watching the entrance for over an hour." "How do you know they were watching him specifically?" Zara asked. "Because when Marcus changed his route to test them, they followed," Shin replied. "Our protection team intercepted before any contact was made." Zara's blood ran cold. "Where is Mr. Kim?" "In emergency meetings since 6 a.m., Shin said. "This isn't random, Miss Johnson. Someone knows about you and your brother specifically." Before Zara could respond, Taeyong's voice cut through the security office with controlled fury. "Get her to the secure wing, now," he said into his phone as he strode through the door. "And double the protection on Marcus immediately." He looked like a man preparing for war. His usual immaculate appearance was slightly disheveled, his hair no longer perfectly styled, his tie loosened as if he'd been pulling at it. But it was his eyes that frightened her, dark with a rage so carefully controlled it seemed volcanic. "Taeyong, what's happening?" she asked. His gaze softened fractionally when it landed on her, but the underlying tension remained. "Someone from my past has decided to resurface," he said grimly. "Someone who knows exactly how to hurt me." "Who?" "Park Jin-young," Taeyong replied, and every person in the security office seemed to stiffen at the name. "Head of the Busan Syndicate. The man responsible for killing my wife and unborn child 5 years ago." Zara felt the world tilt. He's here. In Seoul. He's been here for weeks, Taeyong said with bitter precision. Planning, watching, learning about my new life. Learning about you. The weight of implications settled over her like ice water. This is about me, she whispered. This is about him thinking he can take another family from me. Taeyong corrected sharply. This is about him being wrong. Marcus reached for Zara's hand. Nuna, maybe we should leave Seoul. Go back to Atlanta until this is resolved. No, Taeyong said immediately. Running won't solve this. Park has resources internationally. If he wants to hurt you, distance won't protect you. Then what will, Zara asked. Eliminating him, Taeyong replied with cold finality. Permanently. The security office fell silent except for the hum of monitoring equipment and the distant sounds of the estate being fortified. Zara realized she was seeing Kim Taeyong as he truly was when threatened, not the careful businessman or gentle man learning to love again, but the dangerous crime boss who'd built an empire through calculated violence. Sir, one of the security team interrupted. We have a delivery. What kind of delivery? Shin asked sharply. Flowers, the man replied uneasily. For Miss Johnson. With a note. Every person in the room tensed. Taeyong's expression went deadly calm in a way that made Zara's skin crawl. Scan them for devices, he ordered. Then bring me the note. The next few minutes felt eternal. When the security team returned, they carried a beautiful arrangement of white lilies, the kind used for funerals, and a small card in elegant script. Taeyong read the note first, his jaw tightening with each word. When he finished, he handed it to Zara with reluctant necessity. For the woman who thinks she can heal broken monsters, the card read. Some souls are beyond salvation. Some sins follow you forever. Give Taeyong my regards. PJ. Zara's hands trembled as she processed the threat. He knows about my work. About us. He knows I care about you. Taeyong replied grimly. Which makes you a target? What does he want? She asked. Everything I've built, Taeyong said. My territory, my organization, my future. He wants me to dissolve my operations and disappear from Seoul, or watch history repeat itself. You mean he wants to kill us? Marcus said with teenage bluntness. Yes, Taeyong confirmed without softening the truth. He does. The next 3 days passed in a blur of increased security and escalating tensions. The estate became a fortress, with armed guards at every entrance and electronic surveillance monitoring every approach. Marcus's school visits were suspended. Zara's medical practice was limited to the estate's secure wing. But Park Jin-young was patient, methodical, a predator who understood that psychological pressure could be more effective than direct assault. The threats came in waves. Dead flowers delivered to Marcus's school. Photos of Zara leaving the medical facility slipped under car windshields. Messages left on the estate's security system in the middle of the night. Always the same theme. Taeyong couldn't protect what mattered to him forever. On Friday morning, the escalation reached a breaking point. Zara was in the medical wing treating a minor knife wound on one of Taeyong's associates when alarms began screaming throughout the estate. Security teams mobilized instantly, their coordinated response indicating extensive training for exactly this scenario. Stay here, the associate she was treating said urgently, reaching for the weapon holstered beneath his jacket. What's happening? Zara asked. Breach attempt, he replied tersely. Multiple vehicles approaching the main gate. Before Zara could respond, her phone rang. Marcus's number. Nuna, Marcus's voice was tight with fear. I'm at the hospital for my checkup. There are men here. Korean men in expensive suits, asking about me specifically. Zara's blood turned to ice. Get to the security office immediately. Find Dr. Kim. Don't go anywhere alone. They're blocking the exits, Marcus whispered. Nuna, I think they're here for me. The line went dead. Zara ran toward Taeyong's office, her heart hammering against her ribs. She found him coordinating defensive positions with military precision, his phone pressed to his ear as he managed multiple crisis points simultaneously. Marcus, she gasped. They have Marcus. Taeyong's entire demeanor shifted, cold fury replacing tactical calculation. Where? Seoul Children's Hospital, she said. He was there for his routine checkup. Park's men are there. How many? Taeyong demanded into his phone. 6 that we can see, came the reply through his speaker. Professional, armed, coordinated. They have the kid cornered in the pediatric wing. Acceptable casualties, Taeyong asked with chilling calm. Whatever it takes to get him out safely, came the immediate response. No, Zara said sharply. There are children in that hospital. Sick children who can't be evacuated quickly. Taeyong's eyes met hers, and she saw the terrible choice he was being forced to make. Save Marcus through overwhelming force that could endanger innocence, or risk losing her brother to avoid collateral damage. I'll go, she said suddenly. I'll trade myself for Marcus. Absolutely not, Taeyong replied immediately. It's what Park wants, isn't it? She pressed. To hurt you by taking someone you care about. If I go voluntarily, maybe he'll let Marcus go. And then I lose you both, Taeyong said with barely controlled emotion. That's not a solution, Zara. That's surrender. Then what do you propose? She asked desperately. I propose we end this tonight, he said quietly. Permanently. The weight of his words settled between them. She was asking him to unleash the full violence of his organization, to become the monster he'd been trying to move away from, to choose calculated brutality over the gentler man he'd been discovering. If you do this, she said carefully, if you become that person again to save Marcus, what happens to us? What happens to the man who was so gentle with Yoonji, who's been learning to hope again? He'll still be here, Taeyong replied, his hand finding hers. But first, he has to protect his family. The word hung between them, loaded with implications neither had spoken aloud before. Family, she repeated softly. Yes, he said simply. You and Marcus are my family now. The family I thought I'd never have again, never deserved again. And I will not lose another family to Park Jin-young. Even if it means becoming someone who frightens me, she asked. Do I frighten you, Zara? He asked quietly. Sometimes, she admitted. The violence, the casual way you eliminate threats. But not you, not the man underneath all that protection. Then trust me one more time, he said urgently. Trust that I can do what needs to be done and still be the man you're falling in love with. Her breath caught. I'm not falling in love with you, she said. His face went carefully blank. I've already fallen, she continued softly. Completely, irrevocably, despite every rational reason why I shouldn't. Relief and something deeper flickered across his expression. And I love you too, he said simply. Which is why I'm going to end this threat tonight, whatever it takes. What do you need from me? She asked. I need you to trust me, he replied. I need you to understand that the violence I'm about to unleash comes from love, not darkness. I need you to know that everything I do tonight is to protect our future. I trust you, she said simply. I know who you are, all of you, and I'm not running. The hospital operation was swift, precise, and devastating. Taeyong's teams moved like surgical instruments, neutralizing Park's men with minimal disruption to hospital operations. Marcus was extracted safely within 40 minutes, shaken but unharmed. But Park Jin-young himself escaped, leaving behind a final message that chilled everyone who heard it. This isn't over, Kim Taeyong. You can't protect them forever. Some debts can only be paid in blood. That night, as Marcus slept in the estate's most secure wing and additional security teams patrolled the grounds, Taeyong found Zara in the medical wing, mechanically organizing supplies with shaking hands. It's over, he said quietly. No, it's not, she replied without looking up. He's still out there, still planning, still waiting for another opportunity to hurt the people I love. Then we prepare for that too, Taeyong said, moving closer. Together. How many people did you hurt tonight? She asked. How many lives did you end to save my brother? 3 men who chose to threaten an innocent 16-year-old, he replied honestly. 3 men who would have killed Marcus without hesitation if it meant hurting me. Does it get easier? She asked. The violence. The choices. No, he said simply. But protecting the people you love makes it necessary. Zara turned to face him finally, seeing the man who'd saved her brother written in every line of tension around his eyes. I thought if I kept my heart closed, I could protect everyone, he said quietly. I thought if I never loved anyone again, I couldn't lose them. But I fell in love with you anyway, Zara. Despite every rational precaution, despite knowing it made us both targets. And now, she asked. Now I know that love doesn't make us weaker, he replied. It makes us more dangerous to anyone who threatens what we've built together. Even if loving me puts me in constant danger, she asked. Especially then, he said, pulling her close. Because you're worth fighting for. Worth protecting. Worth becoming a monster to keep safe. As Zara settled into his arms, breathing in his familiar scent, and feeling his steady heartbeat against her cheek. She realized that love in Taeyong's world would never be simple or safe, but it would be absolute, protective, and fierce enough to survive anything that tried to destroy it, even if it meant embracing the darkness alongside the light. The silence that followed Park Jin-young's elimination was not the absence of sound, but the presence of peace. When Taeyong returned to the estate at dawn, Seoul's skyline painted gold with morning light, there was something fundamentally different in his bearing. The tension that had coiled through his shoulders for months was gone, replaced by the quiet certainty of a man who had done what needed to be done. Zara found him in his office, still wearing the black tactical clothing he'd donned for the operation, staring out at the city he'd just secured for their future. He didn't turn when she entered, but his reflection in the window showed eyes that held no regret, only exhaustion and relief. "Is it over?" she asked quietly. "It's over," he confirmed. Park and his entire operation. Permanently. "How many people?" she asked, needing to know the cost of their safety. 17 men who chose to follow a man bent on destroying innocent lives, Taeyong replied with careful precision. It was surgical, efficient, and final. Zara moved closer, studying his profile in the morning light. The man who had been learning to hope again was still there, but tempered now with the absolute knowledge of what he was capable of when his family was threatened. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "I regret that it was necessary," he said finally, turning to face her. "I regret that loving you and Marcus made you targets. But I don't regret protecting what matters most to me." "Which is us," she said. "Which is you," he confirmed, reaching for her hands. "You and Marcus and the future we're going to build together." "What kind of future?" she asked, stepping into his arms. "The kind where you never have to be afraid again," he said simply. "The kind where Marcus grows up surrounded by love and safety. The kind where we remember what it feels like to hope for tomorrow instead of just surviving today." "And you?" she asked. "What do you hope for?" Taeyong was quiet for a long moment, his arms tightening around her. "I hope for a family," he said quietly. "A real one this time. Children's laughter in these halls, birthday parties and Christmas mornings, and all the ordinary miracles I thought died with my first chance at happiness." "You're sure?" she asked. "After everything you've seen, everything you've had to do, you still believe in family?" "I believe in you," he replied. "I believe in us. And I believe that love doesn't replace love, Zara. It multiplies it." The weight of his words settled around them like a blessing. "You're mine, Zara Johnson," he said with quiet intensity. "You and Marcus both. My family, my responsibility, my heart. Forever." "And you're ours," she replied, reaching up to touch his face. "All of you, even the dangerous parts. Especially those, because they're what kept us safe." Later that morning, after Taeyong had showered and changed into civilian clothes, after the estate's security had been scaled back to normal levels, after Marcus had been assured repeatedly that the threat was genuinely over, they sat together in the smaller dining room, sharing breakfast like the family they'd become. Marcus looked between them with the perceptive intelligence of teenagers who've grown up too fast. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Do we stay here permanently? Do I finish school in Seoul? Do you two finally admit you're in love and stop pretending this is just business?" Zara nearly choked on her coffee. "Marcus." "What?" he said with a grin. "I'm 16, not blind. Mr. Kim looks at you like you hung the moon, and you light up every time he enters a room." Taeyong's expression remained carefully neutral, but Zara caught the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth that meant he was fighting a smile. "Your brother is very observant," he said mildly. "And very right," Zara said, reaching for Taeyong's hand across the table. "We are in love. Completely, hopelessly, against all odds and rational thinking." Finally, Marcus said with satisfaction, "I was starting to think I'd have to lock you two in a closet together." 6 months later, Zara awoke to the familiar sounds of Seoul coming alive outside their bedroom windows, and the unfamiliar sensation of morning sickness turning her stomach upside down. She lay still for a moment, processing what her body was telling her, before the reality hit her with stunning clarity. She was pregnant. Taeyong found her 20 minutes later, sitting on the bathroom floor with a positive pregnancy test in her trembling hands and tears streaming down her face. "Zara," he said urgently, dropping to his knees beside her. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "I'm pregnant," she whispered. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear and hope. "How do you feel about that?" he asked carefully. "Terrified," she admitted. "Overjoyed. Completely unprepared. How do you feel about it?" "Like everything I lost has been given back to me," he said softly, pulling her into his arms. "Like maybe this is what healing looks like." "Are you sure?" she asked. "After losing your first child, are you sure you're ready for this?" "I'm sure I love you," he replied. "I'm sure I want to build a family with you. I'm sure that this child will be protected and cherished and surrounded by more love than they know what to do with." "Even if they have a crime boss for a father?" she asked. "Especially then," he said with a smile. "Because their father will move heaven and earth to make sure they grow up safe and happy and free to be whoever they choose to become." The proposal came 3 weeks later, not in some grand romantic gesture, but in the quiet intimacy of their shared morning routine. Taeyong was reading financial reports while Zara reviewed medical journals, both of them comfortable in the domestic rhythm they'd developed. "Marry me," he said suddenly, looking up from his papers. Zara blinked. "What? Marry me?" he repeated, setting aside his reports and giving her his full attention. "Be my wife, officially and legally and permanently. Let me adopt Marcus formally. Let us be a real family in every sense that matters." "You want to adopt Marcus?" she asked, touched by this unexpected development. "I want to be his father," Taeyong said simply. "Not just the man who pays for his education and medical care, but his actual father. The one who teaches him to drive and argues with him about curfew and walks him down the aisle someday, if he chooses to marry." "And our baby?" she asked, her hand moving instinctively to her still flat abdomen. "Our baby will grow up knowing that love comes in many forms," he replied. "That strength sometimes means gentleness, that protection can coexist with kindness, and that family is built on choice as much as blood." "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it." They were married on a crisp October morning in the estate's gardens, with Marcus walking Zara down the aisle in a ceremony that was small but perfect. Dr. Kim from the Children's Hospital officiated, and little Yoonji served as flower girl, still carrying her beloved Mr. Snuggles, but now bright and laughing instead of silent and afraid. The Kim Foundation had funded not only the new pediatric wing, but also a comprehensive trauma counseling program, making Seoul Children's Hospital a model for child-centered care throughout Asia. Yoonji had been one of their first success stories, placed with a loving foster family who understood her needs and supported her healing journey. During the ceremony, as Taeyong promised to love and protect Zara for all the days of their lives, as she vowed to stand beside him through whatever challenges their unique life might bring, Marcus stood as best man with tears in his eyes and health blooming in his cheeks. The experimental treatment had worked beyond anyone's expectations. His latest scans showed no trace of leukemia, and his doctors were cautiously optimistic about using the term remission. He was thriving in his senior year at Seoul International School, planning to study medicine in college, inspired by watching Zara save lives in their unconventional medical practice. Their daughter was born on a snowy February evening, arriving 3 weeks early with her father's dark hair and her mother's warm eyes. They named her Hope, because that's what she represented. Proof that love could triumph over loss, that families could be rebuilt from the ashes of tragedy, that tomorrow could be brighter than yesterday if you were brave enough to reach for it. Taeyong proved to be a devoted father in ways that surprised even Zara. The man who commanded international criminal operations with cold precision became endlessly patient with diaper changes and 3 a.m. feedings. He sang Korean lullabies in a voice soft with wonder, told stories that made Hope giggle and reach for his face with tiny fingers, and approached fatherhood with the same focused intensity he brought to everything that mattered to him. Watching him rock their daughter to sleep while humming traditional songs his own mother had sung to him, Zara understood that healing wasn't about forgetting the past or pretending it hadn't shaped them. It was about choosing to build something beautiful from the broken pieces, about letting love transform old wounds into new strength. The nursery they'd created in the penthouse overlooked Seoul's sprawling lights, a room filled with soft colors and gentle music where their daughter would grow up surrounded by books and toys and the absolute certainty that she was cherished. The walls held photos of their unconventional family, Marcus graduating from high school with Taeyong beaming beside Zara in the audience, Their wedding day, with Hope's ultrasound picture tucked into Zara's bouquet. Candid moments of laughter and love captured throughout their first year as a complete family. On Hope's first birthday, as they celebrated with Marcus and the extended family of associates and employees who had become genuinely devoted to their unusual household, Zara realized that the woman who'd once cleaned floors while dreaming of healing had found something better than her original dreams. She'd found purpose, love, and a future that exceeded anything she could have imagined. "I never thank you properly," she said to Taeyong that night as they stood in Hope's doorway watching their daughter sleep. "For what?" he asked. "For saving us," she replied. "Marcus, me, even yourself. For showing me what it looks like when someone loves so completely they're willing to become dangerous to protect it. You saved me first," he said quietly. "You reminded me that some things are worth the risk of loving them, even if loving them makes you vulnerable." "We saved each other," she corrected, leaning against his shoulder. "Yes," he agreed, his arm tightening around her. "We did." Kim Taeyong had built his empire on control, precision, and the careful management of violence. But his greatest achievement wasn't the territory he commanded or the respect he inspired. It was the family he'd created with a woman who taught him that strength could coexist with gentleness, that protection could come from love instead of fear, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was open your heart and trust someone else to keep it safe. As Seoul slept around them, as their daughter dreamed peaceful dreams and Marcus studied late into the night, with the focused determination of someone who'd learned not to take tomorrow for granted, Zara and Taeyong stood together in their home and marveled at the ordinary miracle they'd built. He'd thought Hope died with his first love, but Zara had shown him that hope, like love, doesn't replace what came before. It multiplies it, transforms it, makes something new and beautiful from the raw materials of loss and longing. Their story wasn't a fairy tale where love conquered all through magic and wishful thinking. It was something more powerful, proof that love could survive in the real world, that families could be forged in fire and emerge stronger, that tomorrow was always possible if you were brave enough to believe in it. And in the quiet of their Seoul penthouse, surrounded by the family they'd chosen and fought for and built together, Kim Taeyong and Zara Johnson Kim knew that some stories don't end. They just transform into new beginnings, each day offering fresh chances to love fiercely, protect completely, and hope courageously for whatever comes next.